Good evening to all of you at home. You are watching The Sweat, but you knew that already. We are available to billions around the world. She's Jessie, I am Emerson, but you knew that already. You probably also know these guys too, but just in case you don't, Jessie, go ahead, take it away.
You've never exactly been a mathematician. It's a DK live trio of Reed Fowler and Jeff Ulrich and Steve Buchanan, plus a real-life doctor in the house, Dr. Selene Parekh. What up? And the reason we have you here is because we're looking at the fantasy impact of some key injuries around the league.
Starting with Ravens quarterback Joe Flacco, who injured his hip in the opening series of last Sunday's loss. Now, at the time, he was fine. However, later on, he was seen walking on crutches. He is questionable for this weekend. So, Dr. P, a source has said if the Super Bowl was this week, Flacco would likely play. Who knows if he ever makes it to the Super Bowl again, though. So what kind of injury do you think he's dealing with here?
So the good news is to get some insight like that it's minor enough that if he had to play, he could. But I'll tell you, I don't put a lot of weight into that kind of insight because if it was that minor, he wouldn't be on crutches. And so when I see an athlete with a hip injury with crutches, you start thinking about a labral issue, which is a tear of the bumper for the cup of the hip. And those can actually oftentimes be painful enough that they end the season, end up with surgery in the offseason, and take 6 to 9 months to return to play. So I'm not so sure I'm as optimistic of this information as the insight provided.
Now for the panel, if Flacco can't go, then we will likely see the first start for Lamar Jackson. And if Jackson does start, what does his fantasy floor look like in Week 11, Reed?
Yeah, I mean, hopefully he does get that start, right? We've heard some reports, and Harbaugh has said, look, Flacco doesn't have to practice to play. So he's sort of playing this close to the vest. We've also heard reports that RG3 might get the start. Hopefully none of those things are true because Lamar Jackson, if he has the ability to start, he could be potentially one of these quarterbacks with that easy schedule that the Ravens have, where you could realistically see him as a 10-point floor with his rushing ability. We saw it in the preseason. We've seen it this year already. He has 8 touches, 8 attempts inside the 20. He's had, obviously, the games where he's had 3 attempts, 7 attempts as gadget plays with Flacco in. So even if RG3 does get the start, I think Lamar Jackson still gets in this game more so than with Flacco. I mean, no, the Ravens, they run a ton of plays. And so hopefully he does get that start because his floor could be nice. Look, his floor could also be 0, right? Because he might not get the nod. But I think that floor with that rushing ability is about 8 to 10 points.
Steve, how do you feel about Lamar Jackson?
Yeah, Reed's pretty much hit it there. I mean, his floor, you can't do anything crazy here. We've seen him take 12 pass attempts on the year thus far. I mean, even back in college, though, one of his biggest knocks was his lack of accuracy, and he's a liability with turnovers. So that obviously is a concern there. But they got a good matchup coming up against the Bengals. I mean, this is a defense that just fired their defensive coordinator. He just got lit up for 51 points against the Saints. I mean, his $4,700 salary is really cheap, but he's probably just a flyer at best in GPPs if he does get the start. He's certainly not in consideration for cash, but, we want to actually see how he performs at this level before we start going with some projections here.
Jeff, how do you feel?
Well, I'm old enough to remember back to the days when Johnny Manziel was getting a start for the Cleveland Browns, and everyone proclaimed him as, the can't-miss floor guy. He was going to get 100 yards on the ground minimum and probably throw for a touchdown. And then he got like 0.5 points for the week. So this is anything but a lock. Steve mentioned his lack of accuracy in the passing game. It is an issue. I mean, he showed it in the preseason, too. He's not a good pocket passer. And hey, look, he's absolutely a better runner than Johnny Manziel, so I'm not really trying to make that comparison, even though I kind of did. He's got a pretty safe floor if he gets to start. I agree. He's probably going to get at least 50 yards rushing, and he's got a really good shot at rushing for a touchdown. I don't know if the upside is there to really chase him in GPPs, and you also have to look at the fact people are probably going to go out of their way to play him this week. People didn't play Marcus Mariota at the same price last week, but I almost guarantee if Lamar Jackson starts, he'll be higher owned than Mariota was last week. So I'm not really big on him. I'm just taking a wait-and-see approach. I'm very happy to see him play, but I'm not going to touch him.
Steve, you laughing about Marcus Mariota back there?
He's just hammering home his Mariota calls. He loves hammering home anything he gets right, so that's fine.
Nailed it!
Yeah, hopefully we don't have to hear about David Johnson in this show.
Yeah. Oh, God. All right.
It's Wednesday on a new week, guys. Okay.
Turn the page.
Dr. P, Bengals wide receiver A.J. Green was expected to miss 2 weeks with a toe injury. There were reports that his absence could extend into December
Yes.
until about 45 minutes ago when Marvin Lewis said he's hopeful Green plays this weekend.
Wow.
But what's the possibility that this could still linger until the end of the regular season?
So whenever I hear some athletes seeing Bob Anderson, Dr. Anderson up in Wisconsin, you know it's a pretty serious issue. And so what AJ Green's dealing with is a sprain to the knuckle, the bottom knuckle of the big toe. It's a turf toe variant, and turf toes can become problematic. And so if he goes this week, I would not put a lot of weight on him or rely on him, because any kind of cutting motion for him will be painful and will affect his route running ability. The turf toe can take 4 to 6 weeks to quiet down. So having him out till December is a reality.
All right, Stephen, I hope you were listening. Again, though, in their first game without Green, Bengals couldn't do much on offense. Did you see anything maybe in Week 10 that would lead you to believe Tyler Boyd or John Ross are worth using if, Green is out, or if he does play, but you just heard what Dr. P had to say?
I mean, you might, want to consider Tyler Boyd this week. I mean, against receivers operating out of the slot, Tavon Young has been targeted against 28 times, allowing 21 receptions for 234 yards and 3 touchdowns. But the problem here is how inconsistent Andy Dalton has been as of late. So it's hard to really get excited to pay $7,000 for Tyler Boyd this week. I mean, he only had 8.9 DK fantasy points against the Chiefs and the Saints. Talking about Dalton here, he had a nice game sandwiched in between against the Buccaneers where he scored 20.2 DK fantasy points. That just shows the vast amount of outcomes you can get out of Dalton here. And then when you think about Ross, I mean, that was the matchup you really wanted to see him kind of break out here. And if it wasn't for that touchdown that he caught, he would have been an absolute bust last week. So it's really hard to get excited about the Bengals receivers without Green. It really shows how much they need Green on there to open up opportunities for the other guys. So, yeah, it's really tough to like him right now.
Jeff, how excited do you get about the possibility of playing Tyler Boyd or John Ross?
Ross is a complete no-go for me. I mean, I just don't think he's good enough to succeed in like a main 1 or 2 role right now. Boyd is interesting with or without Green. I mean, he's going to be low owned because he's still $7K, which is really expensive. I actually like his upside more if Green does play. Even if Green is less than 100%, it just means Jimmy Smith is going to have to follow him around the field, which means it opens up the field for Boyd. Again, not really a must play, not really a player I'm looking for. I think this might be more of a Joe Mixon game for Cincinnati if they bounce back. But Boyd is interesting from that perspective. But on the David Johnson lock-o-meter, this is like a 2 out of 10.
Wow.
Reed, Jeff makes a pretty good point, though. If A.J. Green is on the field, he's got Jimmy Smith following him around. So would that make you a little more interested in like Tyler Boyd?
I mean, of course. I mean, Tyler Boyd's his success is tied to A.J. Green being on the field because he's not seeing the number 1 quarterback and he's operating more out of the slot. And so like Steven, like these guys have mentioned, you really don't know what Cincinnati is doing, what they're playing for. The defensive coordinator was gone, so Marv Lewis. Now you bring in Hugh Jackson. So a lot of these things in-house for Cincinnati aren't going right. But going back to the players, John Ross is a guy that we saw get 20+% of that target share, maybe more a product of what that game was against New Orleans, just out of it. So they're trying to take deep shots. I don't like any of these plays. Boyd is too expensive for me. There's guys like Juju right there that I'd rather play and have more confidence in. But also take a look at Auden Tate. He's a rookie that they signed off the practice squad and activated. He's a 6'4" rookie out of FSU, had the most touchdowns in the ACC. He's not going to even come close to my rosters, but this guy could see more time. He has A.J. Green type body, but obviously not the skill. He's just someone that I'd be interested in seeing, but the other receivers, not so much.
Okay, from one wide receiver to another, Marvin Jones with the Lions is questionable with a knee injury suffered on Sunday. Reports say that he avoided any ACL or MCL damage. That's the good news, but was diagnosed with a bone bruise. This is where you come into play, Dr. P. What exactly is a bone bruise, and is it something you can play through?
So the great news is there's no ligament damage. The bad news is the bone bruise. If you think about the inside of your bone, it's like a sponge, and a bone bruise is where that sponge is damaged, and that can cause a lot of pain, especially right after the injury. So the first week or 2 can be very, very painful. Depending on the location and the size of the damage, for a receiver, it can really impact performance. Now, everybody's not Aaron Rodgers, and so not everybody can kind of sit in that pocket and be able to play with a bone bruise. And Aaron Rodgers as a quarterback can be limited in running. But for a receiver, a much different story. If he goes this week, Again, another receiver that I'm not high on. If he plays this week, you look into 2, 3, 4 weeks after the injury, I get much more optimistic about his performance.
So, Jeff, if Jones is out in Week 11, how smart of a play could, like, Kenny Golladay be? He did see 13 targets against Chicago on Sunday.
I like the spot for Kenny Golladay. This is like an 8 out of 10 on the David Johnson Locko meter. His price has only gone up to 5,800, 13 targets last week. The Lions have no reason not to give this guy 10 targets the rest of the year. I mean, they're basically out of the playoff race. Their defense is failing them. They're going to be in lots of passing situations. And Golladay is basically, he's their best receiver right now. I mean, Marvin Jones, yeah, he's kind of the de facto number one, but he's really more of a number two. And now he comes into this game injured and might not even play. I like Golladay more if Jones is there to take a little bit of coverage off. So whether he plays or not, Golladay is on the radar this week. And it's a good matchup against, not the greatest Panthers secondary.
Hey, Reed, what do you think about this one? Kenny Golladay, a smart play here?
Yeah, he's like about a 5 out of 10 of my Tevin Coleman confidence meter.
Okay.
I mean, when you look at, I call Tevin Coleman too, so I have to take that on the chin as well. But when you look at Carolina, they're pretty good against number one receivers. Obviously, Dante Jackson, the second-round pick. Carolina has gotten that secondary is pretty good. 7 pass deflections, 4 interceptions so far this year. Yeah, he got burned on national television against AB, the best in the game. But this guy is shaping up to be a really good defender. And so I do feel confident as a wide receiver, too, for Kenny Golladay, because just based off of volume, he is going to see double-digit targets if Jones can't go. With Jeff on this, that if Jones is in, then, yeah, Kenny Golladay is a much better play.
Steve, do you have, like, a meter or what?
No, and I won't ever have a meter. I'll just have information, so that's good enough for me.
Are you okay?
When Golden Tate was on this team, he was averaging just 5.8 targets per week. So the 13 targets last week was definitely really encouraging to see. With that being said, I think Jeff's not going enough on this Carolina defense. They're not great, but they're not as easy as he's making it out to seem. I don't think this is a smash spot for Golladay. He's definitely going to get the looks. I'll give him that. But, are you going to trust that Stafford is going to be able to complete all these passes to Golladay? Because that absolutely has to be a concern. He has not looked good at all lately. If anything, if I'm looking in that range, if Joe Flacco is in, John Brown's in a really, really good spot this week, and he's only $100 more than Golladay. And with so much attention going to be on Golladay, I actually like Brown a little bit more in this matchup here. So I totally get why you're looking at Golladay, but it's early in the week. It's only Wednesday, but Golladay is not really on my radar as of yet.
Dr. P.
We'll get there. We'll get there, Steve.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, and also my apologies. I should have never brought up David Johnson. This whole segment just spiraled out of control.
I was going to anyways, Emerson. It's fine.
Yeah.
Hoffman wouldn't have brought it up.
All right, I need all three of you to be quiet because Dr. P, go ahead, go save some lives. The rest of you bums, hang tight. We'll take a gander at some game spreads for the weekend coming up after we play some pick and roll with the NBA dudes.
Hey, what's going on? I'm Brendan Glasheen here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Aaron Rodgers, pretty good at quarterback. Yeah. All right, don't tune me out just yet. Rodgers is pretty good at making a point, too. And what I mean is, normally when A12 is outspoken, specifically on players and their skill sets, those are the guys he's going to feed the football to. Davante Adams is an obvious candidate. He's the star wideout coming off a 2-touchdown game against the Dolphins. Aaron Rodgers said of Adams this week, we got to find ways to keep moving him around to different spots, getting him the ball. Translation, I don't care how he's being covered, I'm getting Davante Adams the football. Outside of the quarterbacks on the slate, Adams the most expensive skill player for Thursday night's showdown contest. And then there's the other Aaron Jones, who put up season highs in carries, 15, and rushing yards, 145 versus Miami last week. Rodgers on Jones. He's a great player. We just need to continue to give him more opportunities. Very self-explanatory. No translation needed. Jones sits behind Adams, fourth on the slate when it comes to salary, $13,500 as a captain, $9K as a flex. Yes, they will both attract a lot of ownership, especially with Randall Cobb out, but you would be hard-pressed not to lock Davante Adams and Aaron Jones in your Thursday night showdown lineups, or else Rodgers might start calling you out.
Welcome back to The Sweat, and we're hitting the hardwood right now with our NBA panel, DK Live's Greg Ehrenberg and Mike Barner, who's with both DK Live and RotoWire.
You just do it all, my man. Well, let's play some pick and roll. We give you two options, and you pick the best one you like best, okay?
Yeah.
Seems easy enough. Option 1, Wizards point guard John Wall. He's going to cost you $9,100. He's scored at least 48.5 DK fantasy points in each of his last 5 games. Option 2, Pelicans guard Drew Holiday, $8,500, who's had 41 plus fantasy points in 8 straight. Ooh. Gregory, who you going with here? Decisions.
Lots of decisions here. For me, I'm going to go with John Wall. He's had like really weird home-road splits for his career. Most guys are better at home than they are on the road, but John Wall is like exceedingly better at home than on the road, to the point where he's somebody who's averaging like 5 more fantasy points for his career at home versus on the road. The other thing to consider with Drew Holiday is the injury situation for the Pelicans. So in recent games, he saw increased production because Alfred Payton was out. Nikola Mirotic has been out. But if we look at tonight, Mirotic now expected to play. Payton could be playing with a minutes restriction, and that would take away from the ball handling responsibilities of Holiday a little bit.
Mr. Barner, you like Wall, or you feel like saving $600?
I'll save $600. I like Holiday in this matchup against the Timberwolves. Both the Pelicans and the Timberwolves are in the top 9 in the league in pace of play, so this could be a high-scoring contest. I actually think that the return of Mirotic will help Holiday. It gives him another good scorer to pass the ball to. It also makes it so the Timberwolves have someone else to focus on defensively. Wall's rolling right now, but I fear the Cavaliers won't be able to keep this game close. They've got a lot of injuries. It's the second game of a back-to-back set. If this game gets out of hand early, we might not see much or any of Wall in the fourth quarter.
Okay.
All right, now for the battle of the one-name stars.
Yes!
And I'm not talking about Madonna.
Oh.
Yeah, Giannis for $11K versus Memphis, or LeBron for 10.3 versus Portland. So where are you going on this one, Mike?
I think LeBron has got the better matchup here. He's already played the Blazers twice. He scored at least 47.8 DraftKings points in both contests. Both of those games were in Portland, so a little bit of a favor falling his way with this game being in Los Angeles. There aren't a lot of teams that can slow down Giannis. However, the Grizzlies do play at the slowest pace in the league, and they allow the fewest points per game. So you can save $700 and go with LeBron, give you a few more options for the rest of your line.
Greg, do you agree? Do you want to take the money and run and go with Bron?
Yeah, well, I'm going to need a price check on Madonna for sure. But
okay.
to address the
LeBron
versus Giannis, what was that, Emerson?
I said you cannot afford her. She would
I
be
I figured as much. If that's the case, I can't afford Giannis or LeBron probably either, though. But looking at Giannis tonight, like Mike said, there isn't any team that could slow him down, except there is nothing that really could slow down a player like pace. In terms of, it doesn't matter if you can't stop him per possession. There's less possessions in the game. So pace of play is an issue for Giannis. The point spread is also an issue. We're looking at the Bucks as 10-point favorites. That game could be a blowout. Giannis is only playing 32 minutes per game this year, playing time a little bit down. So they've been quick to pull the starters out in games that have been one-sided. And if you look at LeBron, not necessarily my favorite play on the slate at 10,300, but pretty safe.
Madonna's like the LeBron of basketball, or a music, rather,
no, like
right?
music, yeah.
Same thing. All right, at center, we've got the Spurs, LaMarcus Aldridge, 8-3, coming off back-to-back games, over 42 DK fantasy points. Utah's Rudy Gobert, 8-1, has 44 points in each of his last 3 games. So, Greg, pick your poison, please.
Yeah, now we've got 2 guys that are in my price range. I really like LaMarcus Aldridge here at 8,300. As good as DeAndre Ayton's been on offense this year, he's arguably the worst defensive player in the NBA right now. And that really lines up with, if you look at just how poorly the Suns have fared against opposing centers this year. And if you look at Aldridge, pretty safe play, 8,300. We've seen a lot of upside from him. Also, Rudy Gay is out of the lineup tonight. Pau Gasol's out. So extra usage, maybe some extra playing time for Aldridge. I think it's a really good spot for him.
What are you doing here, Mike?
I guess I'll take the other side of the argument again. I'm worried that this game could become a blowout. When these two teams met earlier this season, the Spurs won by 30 points. Aldridge only played 24 minutes in that game and finished with 28.9 DraftKings points. Gobert's a walking double-double. He's got at least 1 block in every game this season, so he's got a tremendously high floor. He's played the Mavericks twice this year, scoring 56 and 44 DraftKings points respectively. I don't think they'll be able to slow him down third time around.
Well, just to throw in a plug here, if we go to the DK Sportsbook, only a 5-point spread, so not really expecting it to be a massively one-sided game.
Ooh. Always love a good.
I think it's going to be a blowout. I'll go blowout. I'll stick with it.
Oh,
All
yeah.
right, I like that. I like
Spurs aren't any good
this.
this year.
I like Barner. Welcome to
Twitter
the program.
Streets. All right, guys. Finally, we've got 2 sub-7K options coming off big games. Brooklyn guard D'Angelo Russell at 6.7K versus Miami. That big game, he had 49.5 fantasy points in that last game that he played.
Go on.
Then you can have Celtics forward Jason Tatum for 6.6K versus Chicago. He put up 43 points last time out. So, Mike, who's it going to be?
I'm not overly high on either player, but if I have to pick one, I'll go with Russell. Karis LeVert was averaging 30 minutes a game and had the second highest usage rate on the team, so his injury leaves a pretty big void for them to fill. Russell already has the highest usage rate on the team, but we know he never is afraid to take a few extra shots. Even though Tatum's had a good last couple of games, he had scored 30 DraftKings points or fewer in each of his previous 6 contests. I just think the Celtics have too much depth for him to provide consistent high-end production.
Yeah, thank goodness Karis LeVert injury not as bad as it seemed. Looks like
Definitely.
it's just ligament damage.
That
T's
was
and P's.
frightening.
All right, Greg, who are you going with on this one?
Yeah, Russell for me also. If you look at the big game he had last time out, it was definitely in part because LeVert wasn't there. 9 3-pointers for Russell, personal best for him. And then also, if you look at Tatum, like I understand there's a lot of hype about him because you guys were over in a Boston office. But the reality is Tatum's been pretty good for his NBA career, but he's not like some superstar like a lot of the Boston media makes him out to be. He's a nice NBA player. He's a nice prospect. But I go towards Russell, I think, is the better fantasy contributor at this point in time.
Don't talk to us like that, Greg. Okay?
I'll talk to you however I want to.
Oh, yeah, let's
No.
go.
All right. Before this show goes way off the rails, thank you two. Take a break, but don't go far because we do need to do some Tears of Joy with you guys after we talk some National Hockey League.
As for now, here's Pat Mayo with the top wide receivers for this week.
Do I want to pay all the way up for Michael Thomas at his number, which I kind of do? And then you have like Julio, you have Beckham, but then you have DeAndre Hopkins at $7,900. I have a note in my office that says every time that DeAndre is below $8,000, play him.
Yeah, I think we had that. I think this last time I was on the show, we actually had a similar situation. And I think I talked about the same thing. We talked about the same thing. And it was he has like a extremely ridiculous plus minus on average when he's under 8K. So I think he's the player. I mean, Michael Thomas at 8,800, that is a lot. I mean, Philly gets destroyed by number one receivers. They're kind of banged up at cornerback. So I totally get it. But especially at receiver when I can, I try not to pay all the way up because the floors for receivers are still lower because like an $8,800 receiver is going to touch the ball like on average, 10 times less or half the time or a third of what like a running back that costs that much would be.
And with the way that we were just talking about running backs, like if Dion Lewis is going to be your like lowest like safe option and he's still $4,800, you're going to want to pay up at running back or at least into the mid-tier at running back. That being able to afford a whole bunch of high-end receivers, well, that could be the contrarian move in some tournaments in a way to construct some lineups. Is probably not the optimal build of what you want to do. So I think starting with DeAndre is really good. Like I like Beckham, I like Julio, I like Thomas, but if I can get those savings, I like DeAndre Hopkins just as much. And frankly, he might get a higher volume share than all of these guys because I don't know how DT is going to look in this offense with Cutie back. Is Cutie going to be used a bunch? I don't know. Maybe Deshaun Watson will drop back and say, you know what? I know the guy who catches the ball. No matter where I throw it, I'll throw to him. And he's being shadowed by Josh Norman. And people are playing that up like that's a big deal. Come on. This isn't 2005. It's going to be fine. And DeAndre Hopkins overcomes every terrible matchup he has. So he's my smash play from the top. The two I'm really interested in, Evans and Boyd, 73, 7,000, only because they're coming off really shit weeks that no one's going to want to use them.
Boyd, I kind of warned about this. I was talking to my dude Matthew Freeman on the Action Network NFL pod last Friday, and Boyd was a guy that I didn't think he was a great play last week either because, like, if AJ Green is out, like AJ Green is a guy who is one of the scariest receivers for opposing defensive coordinators to face, right? So when he's out, now you free up all of these resources to concentrate on taking the team's, top receiving weapon out of the game, who's Tyler Boyd, which changes the whole dynamic of the offense and of the whole dynamic of Boyd. So like, if AJ Green's out, I actually like Boyd less because there's no one to take the coverage away. Like he's just going to have a target on his back. So I think I'd much rather go with Mike Evans in this spot because Evans is a guy who he's just like your quintessential tournament play where he's a high volume guy who gets a lot of air yards. He knows how to score touchdowns, but sometimes it's just not there for him. There's a lot of weapons on the offense. He's not the fastest guy, so sometimes he He just gets kind of messed up by certain defensive backs. But Ryan Fitzpatrick is throwing for 400 or 500 yards every game. Evans is still their number one receiver. So there's going to be games where he gets, a 25, 30% share of those yards. And we've seen that already. And multiple times this season, he's going to have monster games. So give me Evans there over Boyd.
All right, time to cool off the program with some sticky puck, but we're also starting to get a little warm in here because joining us right now, DK Live stud muffin, Ben Zwyman. Hello, friend. Woo!
Hey guys, how's it going?
It's good. So only 4 games on the fantasy hockey docket tonight, and we need you to help us choose between the 2 highest priced players at each position.
Okay, at center, a couple guys who are near guaranteed points producers each night. You got Patrice Bergeron, $7,500. Nathan McKinnon, $200 cheaper. Who do you like as these two battle it out tonight in Colorado?
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough call. I'm willing to pay up for Bergeron, though, in this spot because he's a bit more consistent over the past week or so. At least 4.5 fantasy points in each of the past 4 games. It's not an easy decision, but the Bruins are a bit deeper despite being on the road. I think Bergeron gets an easier matchup here because obviously McKinnon's going to have to deal with the Bruins' depth a little bit. David Krejci probably. Varlamov is in goal, inferior to Yaroslav Halak. I can't believe I just said that. But I would lean Bergeron in cash games. Maybe look at McKinnon and GPPs.
All right, out on the wing, Chicago's Patrick Kane at $7,200 in St. Louis, or Jets captain Blake Wheeler at $6,800 against the Caps.
Yeah, I mean, I'm buying into the narrative here that the Blackhawks will actually come out and end their 8-game losing streak at home versus the Blues. If that's the case, expect Patrick Kane to have a big night. Again, this is a tough call because I like Blake Wheeler a lot against the Caps, but Kane are obviously higher floor and the ceiling. He scored nearly a point per game in his career against the Blues, 59 points in 60 games. Last time around, Kane lit them up for 2 goals, 9 fantasy points. I'll take my guy number 88 tonight.
Benny Z, to the boys of the blue line we go. St. Louis D-man Alex Pietrangelo, $5,600. Boston's Torrey Krug, $5,400. Take your pick, please.
Yeah, I'm going to stick with the Bruins here and go with Krug at the discounted price. I expect a response from the Hawks tonight, so that could be bad for Pietrangelo. On the other hand, Krug's been fantastic since returning from injury. The past 4 games, he has 4.0 fantasy points in each of those contests. He's skating on the first power play unit and is being forced to take a lot more shots with the Bruins blue line. A little thin right now. Both guys on the road. I'll take the hotter player in Krug.
All right, between the pipes, the top matchup of the night, Washington's Braden Holtby, $7,300, or Winnipeg's Connor Hellebuck, $8,200. He's the highest priced player on the slate. So who are you going to take here?
Yeah, this is a pretty easy pick. Braden Holtby's price is really affordable, so maybe I can look at him in some GPPs, but nothing really stands out for him. He hasn't been playing well. The Caps haven't really been playing well, and the Jets are at home, where Hellebuck has been fantastic. His past 2 games, he has at least 6.6 fantasy points and 2 wins at home. I think Hellebuck is definitely the safest option on the slate. Again, short slate, so you're going to have to sort of stick that pick and net. The Jets have the highest implied goal total on the slate at 3.4 goals. They're also a heavy favorite, -175 on DraftKings. So both solid goalie trends. I wouldn't let the matchup against Ovi and your Capitals scare you off of Hellebuck tonight, so I'm going to go with them.
All right, speaking of this slate here, dude, before you take off, how about that slate-approved pick, your lock of the evening?
All right, since you already made me talk about Kaner, I'm going to go with Jets center Mark Scheifele against the Caps at home. Washington has had serious problems killing penalties this season. They ranked 28th on the kill. Scheifele has perhaps the highest ceiling of any player on the slate. He's coming off back-to-back performance of at least 3 points at home. I really like his price at $6,900, obviously. So give me Scheifele in the Winnipeg Boys tonight.
I would just like to say real quick, Ben, I like when you're clean-shaven. Very good luck for you,
thank
man.
you.
Yeah.
Very good luck.
I shaved for you. I'm going to be in the office tomorrow. I figured I'd, clean up a little bit.
It's
Slate
about
approved.
damn time.
All right. Thanks for the help, Ben. We're going to take
No problem,
a closer
guys.
look at some of this weekend's game spreads around the NFL next.
But first, here's Adam Levitan from his DFS Edge solo pod, giving all you fine people at home some advice on roster construction.
What are your thoughts on all the lineup optimizers out there. Seems like everyone has an opinion based on the same data I could find myself. Well, I think people have a big misconception about what a lineup optimizer or a mass multi-entry generator is. People just think, oh, hey, I click a button, it gives me 150 lineups of the nuts, and I print money. Obviously to anyone with a brain, that's not the case. Even if you have the best projections in your optimizer, the stone best, and then you optimize 150, that doesn't mean you win. Because so much of winning GPPs is roster construction and combos, etc. Just spitting out 150 lineups projected to score the most points, that's not enough. Now, if you think you have awesome projections and you want to play cash, maybe you upload those projections into an optimizer, and then you have it give you 5 or 10 lineups for you to choose from. I think there's certainly value in that. But yeah, I'd obviously recommend doing your own work if you have the time. Like an optimizer is only as good as the projections. So if you think Aaron Jones is going to see 80% of the running back touches or 90% of the running back touches this week and everybody else thinks he's going to see 60%, then you need to do your own work and get that into the optimizer. Otherwise, the optimizer is a total waste.
All right, welcome back to The Sweat, everyone. She's Jessie Coffield. I'm Emerson Lotzia. Now here's Fowler, Ulrich, and Buchanan. And how does everyone feel about playing some NFL high or low with a focus on game spreads? Cool?
Yes.
Super duper.
That's great.
Oh, wow.
Love
okay,
all
gang.
the attitudes. Didn't hear anything out of Steve, but that's okay.
So
I said that's great.
Okay,
Oh,
all right.
wow.
Ugh. All right.
I'm sorry.
So, are the following spreads too high, too low, or just right? Panthers are 4-point road favorites against the Lions. Too high or too low, Steven?
I think it's too low. I think the Panthers have no problems taking the Lions down in this game. When you look at the usage that Christian McCaffrey has been getting as of late, the Lions just can't defend on the ground, and that's, I think, where they're going to win this game here. And they're so poor against receivers out of the slot, too. The 1% of you that took Anthony Miller know all about what happens when you have a receiver in the slot there going up against the Lions. He blew up for 5 receptions, 122 yards, and a touchdown. So I just think there's too many holes in this defense that the Carolina can pounce on and take this game handedly.
Reed, do you agree?
I'm actually going the other way. I think this is a little too high, and it's weird to say that 4 points is too high. But Carolina, look, Detroit has the #1 defensive line DVOA, and look what happened to Carolina when they're facing Pittsburgh. Cam got sacked. He threw a ball haphazardly out of the end zone that got returned for a touchdown. And so, although Carolina on paper is a lot better, when Steve mentioned all those skill players, what they can do against Detroit, Carolina is allowing 88% of red zone opportunities to end in a score, and Detroit 64% of the time they're throwing the ball. So when you look at this game, it really could go either way. I will say this, though. Carolina is 3-1 against these guys in the last 4 meetings. It could go either way, so I'm going to say Carolina wins by about 1 or 2, but not by much.
Jeff, we've got 1 too high, 1 too low. Are you just right?
Yeah.
I actually am. Sadly enough, I didn't even plan it, but I actually think this is the perfect line because, look, I'm not a fish like Reed. I don't look at past matchups, but look at what Carolina's on the road
He doesn't do his homework. You're right.
Look at what Carolina's done on the road this year. They're 1-3. They squeaked out against the Eagles, and they lost to Washington. They got blown out by Pittsburgh. They also got beaten pretty handily by Atlanta. So this has not been a good road team at all. And I think that the Lions are probably going to bounce back at least a little bit. I do think Carolina is obviously the better team. They deserve to be favored, but I don't think it should be a big spread. 4 sounds about right.
Wow.
So, yeah, I guess I'm the middle guy.
This is perfect.
Actually, just right is perfect.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
Yeah.
Coming off a win in San Francisco, the Giants are 2.5-point home favorites against the Bucks. Too high, too low, maybe just right for your palate, Reed?
Yeah, I'm going to say this is too high. Look at the Giants. This is the first time they've been favored all season. I just don't. I get that they did cover and they did beat San Francisco, what we saw Monday night. But at the same time, really, you're looking at a Giants team that really can't get anything going. I will say, though, that when you have these two teams going up against each other, two bad teams, I'll take the skill players. I think talent always beats or always wins the tiebreakers in this. And you have Saquon Barkley going up against Tampa Bay defense that we've talked about earlier in the week in these segments. I think it's just going to run all over these guys. They have injuries in that linebacking core. Tampa Bay does. I'm going to say that the Giants do win this, but again, they're a bad team. But I say they beat Tampa Bay.
Let's see, Jeff. What do you think? Giants are actually favored at home.
I can't believe I'm coming on here 2 weeks in a row and saying that the Giants are getting disrespected, but they are getting disrespected again. I mean, what is the difference between Tampa and New York? They both have terrible defenses, offenses that put up a ton of yards, have trouble scoring points, though, in the red zone at times. And, Tampa has one more win than the Giants on the year? Big deal. I mean, Fitzpatrick is still there just slinging, interceptions and touchdowns like it's nothing. So I don't think that the Giants should be any less than 3 points in this game. And I think the fact that they're under 3 points is again, it's just disrespectful and it's pointless. I mean, there's really nothing here. So I'll take the Giants if it's going to be 2.5 at home coming off a win. So, yeah, I think this is too low.
Steve, on a scale of 1 to 5, 5 being most disrespectful, how much disrespect are the Giants being shown? 2.5-point home favorites against the Bucs.
I mean, them being favored threw me for such a loop that, I didn't even know what to write down for an answer. I'm still so on the fence on this game here. I mean, we just saw Ryan Fitzpatrick throw for over 400 yards, and he couldn't even reach the end zone. And, these guys are saying that both defenses are crap. I mean, to be fair, the Giants haven't allowed a quarterback to exceed 300 passing yards more than twice this season. So, I mean, that's not too shabby there. But I'm more interested to see how this plays out throughout the week. I feel like it's a coin flip, really. Essentially, right now is how this is playing out. So I'll just say this is probably just right because I'll just be that guy. But I think this game could really go either way. I'm just interested to see how this plays out as the week goes on.
Guys, the Chargers are 7-point favorites at home versus the Broncos. How do we feel about this one, Jeff?
I mean, let's go back and look at who the Chargers have beaten. I know they're 6-2, but they've beaten Oakland twice in their last 6 games. They've beaten San Francisco, and they beat some other terrible team. Oh, they beat Cleveland with Hugh Jackson, which is again, it's the same thing as beating Oakland. So, I mean, 4 of their last 6 wins have been against terrible teams. They squeaked one out against Tennessee, and they barely won against some other team. Again, I have the worst short-term memory in the world.
Yeah.
But anyways, all I'm trying to say is the Chargers' last 6 games really not that impressive, even though I know they've won them all. So the Broncos aren't that bad. They still have a pretty good defense. The Cortland Sutton and Emmanuel Sanders to attack on offense and a good run game. I don't think this should be 7 points at all. I think at the very least it should be 6.56. I think 7 is way too much respect for the Chargers.
Steve, on a scale of 1 to 5, how much
Go
respect are the Chargers getting?
20. I mean, look,
at least this is just too high. I mean, Jeff is totally right. Every game the Chargers have won this season, it easily could have been a loss, with the exception of that game against the Browns. Now they're coming off a game against the Raiders where they can only muster 20 points. I mean, compared to what the Raiders are defensively, when they play the Broncos this week, it's going to feel like they're going up against the 1985 Bears. I mean, they're just light years ahead of whatever crap the Raiders are throwing out on the field every single week. But really, what's going to make or break this game for the Chargers is their run game. The Broncos have been so good against the run, except that little sample from weeks 4 to 6, where they just got absolutely torched by the Chiefs and the Jets and somebody else. I forget who it is, but they were just torched. Trust me on that one. But really, that's what's going to make or break this game here. If they can't get Melvin Gordon going, then they're not going to win this one. So I think it's just too high.
Reed, everybody seems to think this is just too high. Are you on this too high train that everybody seems to be on?
Oh, wait, what?
yeah, no, I am here. I don't know if that was a trick question, but
it wasn't.
But this team, Denver is 3-6, and so talking about Denver as a good team, yeah, Los Angeles, sorry for that slip up there, has faced bad teams, but this division is bad. It's the first time they're meeting Denver, so they get them twice. But like Steve mentioned, Denver has given up big games to rushers, to guys who are really good. And Melvin Gordon is arguably one of the best running backs with Todd Gurley and these other guys in the league. Denver's pass DVOA and pass defense is actually a lot better than we anticipated, but at the same time, their rush defense is not. And so I do think this goes and this plays into the Chargers and what they want to do. They don't need to score a ton of points to actually win these games because they're playing against these AFC West teams that are bad. They might get Joey Bosa back, and if that's the case, even if he plays a limited amount of snaps, you still have to pay attention to that guy. I think it's too high, but for different reasons than the guy said.
Yeah, I heard that happening as I was saying it, but I couldn't.
I was watching it, and I'm like, just say it, say it.
That's the win goddess. The win goddess. You gotta say it.
All right, guys. Last and certainly least, let's give it up for the Cardinals, who are 5-point home favorites over Oakland. Steve, please share with the people at home your thoughts and feelings about this spread.
I'm excited for this one.
I don't even want to talk about this game.
Oh
That's
my
fine.
God.
That's fine.
This whole game's just so stupid, but I think this one just might be too low. I mean, amazingly, they're only able to score 14 points against the Chiefs, talking about the Cardinals here. I mean, that's just absolutely asinine. But then the Raiders can't score either. I mean, if they had an open field, they still would somehow fumble and they wouldn't be able to score. I mean, it's amazing that they were averaging 10 points over their last 5 games, 4 of which were under 10 points or less. I mean, how does that even happen? How Gruden, hello, what's going on over here? And then Cardinals have held opposing quarterbacks to under 250 passing yards in 4 straight games. Good luck, everybody. Enjoy that game. You won't see it anywhere in my house, whatever.
Reed, you're a huge, not Cardinals, but Oakland Raiders guy.
All right.
Yeah, it's good. It's been a hard 20 years for being a Raiders fan. No, yeah, like I agree with Steve here. When you look at the Raiders, they're 2-7 against the spread, a margin of loss or defeat of 13. And Steve mentioned it and covered it pretty well across this past week when we talked about the Raiders. And this is too low. I mean, when you look at the Raiders, they cannot score. And if you look at that D line against O line, Arizona's D line is pretty good. They can get to the passer. And we see what happens when Derek Carr gets a little pressure. The offensive line for Oakland is absolutely horrendous. David Johnson, Jeff's boy, should have a big game. So I'm going to say this is too low.
Here we go.
Jeff, how much disrespect are the Cardinals being shown here?
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to get the information on this too high train, when it leaves, and when I can get on it.
I'll talk to the captain for you, Jeff.
Okay, but no, I think this is too low. I mean, I think the Cardinals are going to absolutely destroy them. Look, yeah, they only scored 14 points against the Chiefs. They covered the spread. The spread was 17. They kept them to 12 points. They actually had a chance to win this game in the fourth quarter. This was a one-score game in the fourth quarter. They sacked Patrick Mahomes 5 times last week. I'm pretty sure that's more sacks than he had going in on the year. So, look, their defense played well. They held up well against like one of the top 3 teams in the league, and now they're coming home playing against John Gruden's Raiders. No, it's going to be a demolition. Anything under a touchdown is too low in my opinion.
You playing Josh Rosen, Jeff?
Josh Rosen, David Johnson. Who else is on? Christian Kirk.
Wow.
Cardinals.
Incredible.
All right, guys, we need
What a
all
brave
3
man.
of you for some price check coming up right after some NBA Tears of Joy.
I'm Brendan Glasheen here with your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. Kevin Durant and Draymond Green have yet to kiss and make up. The Warriors did beat the Hawks Tuesday night without Draymond, as he was suspended for 1 game without pay by the team due to the locker room dust-up following Monday's contest against the Clippers. Draymond didn't pass KD the ball. You get it by now. KD asked if he and Green have hashed anything out since the incident. His answer was a stern no. This league is amazing. Golden State's won 3 titles in the last 4 years. The franchise wins 1 in 2015. They get topped by Cleveland in 2016. Draymond then is texting Durant to recruit him to Silicon Valley. Boom! 2 more banners, and the Warriors are likely on their way to a 4th championship, at least an appearance, in the last 5 years. They're an association best 12-3, but there's drama, there's animosity, only in the NBA. Look, at some point, sports dynasties do come to an end. Is this the beginning of the end for the Warriors? That's a bit strong, but the Draymond-Durant saga reeks bad news. It could affect their teammates, except DeMarcus Cousins. Well, he's not playing, but Boogie was the peacemaker, for crying out loud. Since when? Warriors hit the road for 3 straight against the Texas Triangle. We'll see if KD and Draymond make peace by tip-off versus the Rockets Thursday night.
All right, for those of you who do not enjoy basketball, we have some good news. This is the last time you're going to see it in our show tonight.
Wow, for those of you who do enjoy basketball, we have some bad news. This is the last time you're going to see it on our show tonight.
DK Live's Greg Ehrenberg is here. Mike Barner of DK Live and RotoWire is making his return, his first appearance on the show. You're doing great, young man.
Keep it up.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
Thank you.
Before we get to Tears of Joy, Greg, what news are you keeping an eye on tonight as we sort of head in and approach lock?
Yeah, so I'm looking at the Minnesota Timberwolves right now. Like, they've been ridiculously difficult to figure out so far this year. We've had guys ruled out after lock. We've had lineup switches happening all the time. But I think for tonight, we just heard that Derrick Rose has been ruled out. So to me, Jeff Teague, who is questionable, who is now expected to play, I think that he makes for a really good value. Robert Covington is pretty cheap. He was just traded to them in the Jimmy Butler swap, and he's expected to start. So I think there's good value there. And then also a lot of extra usage going to Karl-Anthony Towns with Butler off the team.
Mike, any of those stories you keeping your eye on as well? Anything else to add?
Yeah, I saw that Elfrid Payton has been ruled out for the Pelicans, so I like Drew Holiday even more now. Another interesting one that kind of came out of nowhere is Serge Ibaka was ruled out for the Raptors with a knee injury. Jonas Valanciunas is only $5,000 against the Pistons, so that's a pretty good tournament play there.
Yeah, I like Valanciunas a lot also.
Yeah.
All right, good stuff, guys. Now to our NBA tiers contest tonight. Mike, tier 5, you've been able to study each of them. Who is your guy?
Well, Jusuf Nurkic might not be the sexiest name of the group, but I like his upside against the Lakers. He's had some success against them so far this season, scoring at least 30.3 DraftKings points in both of their previous 2 games. Even though he's only playing 25 minutes a game, he gobbles up a lot of rebounds and actually has almost an identical usage rate to CJ McCollum. Other people might take the bigger names of the group, but don't sleep on Nurkic.
You have 8 players to choose from, Gregory. Who is your man?
Well, I'm going to have to disagree about Jusuf Nurkic not being a sexy name because that's what gets my sweatometer going is Nurkic.
Oh, come on. This is a family-friendly program. Save it for the sweat after dark.
But I love Nurkic. I mean, he's never really like a safe cash game play because the performance is a little all over the place. The minutes are all over the place. Sometimes he gets into foul trouble. But when he's going well, like he has such big fantasy upside. Like we see him rack up a lot of fantasy points really quickly. Scores over a fantasy point per minute. In a matchup against a pretty big Lakers front court with JaVale McGee and Tyson Chandler, I think the Trailblazers are going to need big minutes out of Nurkic tonight. So as long as he stays out of foul trouble, I think he's in for a big game.
All right, Greg, take us to tier 6 and who you'd roster.
All right, so tier 6. I know that I kind of poo-pooed on Jason Tatum in the last segment, but with that said, I do think that he's the guy with the highest upside in this tier. The other thing that I think we also have to consider is that Marcus Morris has been ruled out with an illness, so I think that's going to mean more minutes for Tatum. Also more minutes potentially for Gordon Hayward. I know he's not here, but worth mentioning because we're covering the news that no more minutes restriction for Gordon Hayward and Marcus Morris out, so that can mean that good value on Hayward at 5,100.
Mike, you like Tatum or are you going somewhere else in this tier?
I'll go someplace else. I still think it's weird that the Knicks aren't starting Enes Kanter at center, but it hasn't stopped him from posting a double-double in 5 straight games. He's been feasting on teams' second units, and his usage rate coming off the bench is almost 5% higher than when he was starting. A few of the players in this tier, they could be involved in some lopsided scores. I think the Knicks keep it close enough to where Kanter can have another valuable performance.
Yeah, man, north of 37 DK fantasy points his last 2 outings. Finally, who are you rostering no matter what tonight, Mike, also known as your slate-approved pick?
I'm not sure I can pass up Hassan Whiteside against the Nets. The Nets continue to be destroyed by opposing centers. They've allowed the most DraftKings points per game to the position by a significant margin. Whiteside's on a roll right now with at least 45 DraftKings points in 3 of his last 4 games. He's not going to kill your budget either, so I don't think I can pass him up.
Wow, Mike's got me sold. What can you do for the people at home here, Greg?
Yeah, it's Towns for me. I just think that he's somebody whose price is going to continue to rise now that Jimmy Butler's off the team. There's more usage going towards him. He'd even play well against the Nets, and he still put up a 20-20 game. He had like 1 million turnovers, but still, he did so much damage. If he just plays decently, like we're going to regularly see him score 50 to 60 fantasy points per game.
All right.
All right, you two, you're free to go.
Good luck with your sweatometer, Greg.
Yeah. Reed, Jeff, and Steve are going to be back with some NFL price check after our final fantasy flash of the evening.
Time for your DraftKings Fantasy Flash. I'm Brendan Glasheen. Whopper of a trade in the NHL Wednesday. Not really, just an unexpected one-for-one swapperoo. The LA Kings acquire Penguins forward Carl Hagelin, while Pittsburgh gets forward Tanner Pearson. Kings have just 5 wins, a league low, so they decide to shake things up a little bit. General Manager Rob Blake on the trade. Here's the quote: "Our team is obviously not in a position we are comfortable with in terms of how we are playing. This is a change to our lineup that gives us an additional amount of speed." Hagelin in the final year of his deal, so perhaps Blake sees an opportunity for salary dumping with this move. Hagelin should help LA kill penalties in his 1 year remaining. Kings rank 21st on the PK. Pearson was a Kings rookie when the franchise won the Stanley Cup in 2014. Just 1 assist in 17 games. He's got 3 more years on his deal, so the Penguins do get some control, maybe a turnaround. He did score 24 goals and log 44 points 2 seasons ago, so the 26-year-old left winger has promised to benefit playing with Sidney Crosby and/or Evgeny Malkin. Pens are home Thursday to face the Lightning, while the Kings are back to work Friday night at the Blackhawks. We'll see how the deal works out for 2 organizations with championship pedigree.
One more time with Reed, Jeff, and Steve, our NFL panel, and it's time for some price check.
Guys, Jessie was just shocked by her microphone. You're okay?
Yeah, thanks for adding that. You want to go ahead?
All right. Allow me. Will these players return value on their salary this week? Reed at quarterback. We got Andrew Luck in the Colts, 3-game win streak. He's priced at $5,900. Hosting the Titans, second place in the division is up for grabs. You paying up for Captain Luck?
Dearest mother, I am not paying up for Captain Luck here. If you're not following that Twitter handle, you better because it's hilarious. But yeah, his projected ownership is coming around right now at this point in double digits. And in this game, like you mentioned, Tennessee's defense is really good. We've seen that they're fifth worst for opposing quarterbacks in giving up DK fantasy points, only about 17. If we're talking about that game specifically, in GPPs, I'd rather take Mariota. Indy's 12th best for opposing QBs. But Matt Stafford, we talked about him, that we don't have a lot of confidence in him in terms of getting that ball to Kenny Galladay, but I think they have to pass quite a bit in that game. So I do like him a lot better at 5,400 as opposed to Captain Luck.
Jeff, would you pay $5,900 for Captain Luck, or are you going to go elsewhere?
Look, in honor of your Anchorman promo that you put up, and by the way, go follow the Sweat at the Sweats DK on Twitter. In honor of your Anchorman promo, though, I think we should rename Andrew Luck Sex Panther because 60% of the time he works every time. This guy's put up 22 or more DK points in like the last 6 games. He's put up 22 points against Jacksonville. I mean, he's just rolling. He's got 14 touchdowns over his last 4 games. I mean, he hasn't even thrown for 300 yards and he's hitting 22 points. Like, ultra efficient right now. I think it's too cheap. I like this price. You can just plug them in. Good crash game play for sure.
All right, Steve, what are you doing? Yeah, $5,900 for Sex Panther or what?
Man, hard act to follow, man. Jeff pulling the fire here. But look, I think this comes to a screeching halt this week. I mean, the Tennessee defense is just too good at this point. I mean, look, they just held Tom Brady and the Patriots to 11 DK fantasy points last week. Didn't even make it look close or good for the Patriots at all. And if they're going to win this game, they're going to have to rely on Luck to throw, which isn't a bad thing, but I got to give the respect to the Titans defense in this one. It's a big fat no for me on this one.
All right, at running back, Detroit's Kerryon Johnson coming off 25.9 fantasy points last week. He comes in at $5,800 this week. How do we feel about this price tag, Jeff?
It's a little deceiving. I mean, I know he's coming off a big game, and I like Kerryon Johnson, but he kind of got lucky. He got some garbage time points last week. That touchdown easily could have gone to Theo Riddick, who was splitting passing downs with him. So just keep that in mind. And then you look at the matchup this week against Carolina. They've given up the 7th fewest DK points to opposing running backs. I just don't like this. This is why I like Galladay more. I feel like it's going to get funneled more towards the pass this week. I still like Kerryon Johnson. The price isn't bad, but I think I'd rather go Galladay if you're taking a line.
Do you feel the same way, Reed? You want to maybe pass on Kerryon Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, when you talk about Theo Riddick, he's someone that we have to consider now in those passing game or passing opportunities. Now that he's healthy, maybe he goes into that slot. It's sort of a la Duke Johnson, what we see in Cleveland. But yeah, at the same time, like you look at that Lions game, like I just mentioned, they're going to be pass heavy. And Kerryon Johnson, while getting more touches and being a focal point, seeing the majority of the snaps, it still remains to be seen. And how many attempts does he get in this game? It's just weird saying it, and I don't like saying it, but Jalen Richard and some of these guys on Oakland, they're going to have to be passing against Arizona. Arizona's probably going to be up in this game quite a bit. So I like him in terms of volume more so than a guy like Kerryon Johnson.
Steve, these guys not too high on Kerryon Johnson. How do you feel about him?
Yeah, I'm not too big either. I mean, I just feel like it's going to have to come to an end at some point. I mean, Theo Riddick is still very much involved in this game. He's still seeing a healthy dose of targets. And while Riddick isn't seeing any carries, wasn't really to begin with, he hasn't seen any at all over the past 2 weeks. So he is strictly just catching passes out of the backfield at this point. And also, I think it's noteworthy that while I don't think he's going to come in and start dominating targets or anything, Bruce Ellington is on the team now. And I expect him to start getting some work this week as well. And again, it's not like he's going to go in there and start stealing all these targets, but it's just another mouth to feed and another option for Stafford to go to. So I'm not crazy about him here this week, but I think I'll be looking elsewhere.
All right, how about Denver's Emmanuel Sanders here, guys? He was on bye last week. This week he's priced at $6,200 against the Chargers. This is steal, Steven?
You know, individual matchup-wise, this is a pretty tough one for him. I mean, coming out of the slot, Desmond King in coverage has been pretty good. He's allowed 28 of 35 targets to be caught against him, but they're only averaging about 7.5 yards per catch on those receptions. So he hasn't been scored upon either on the season thus far, and the Chargers have only allowed 2 touchdowns from receivers playing out of the slot. So it's not a really great spot for him. I mean, you look at Alshon Jeffrey, who's just $100 more against the Saints this week. I think that's a route I'd rather go.
What would you do, Reed? Would you pay $6,200 for Sanders? You got T.Y. Hilton is $100 less. Let's see. I mean, John Brown, you know the guys around there. Keenan Allen, a few $100 more.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Steve here. Look, if you look at the Chargers' pass defense, right? They're giving up a lot of yards, but at the same time, on these individual competitions and these individual matchups, they're pretty good. You also have Derwin James there that could rattle this defense, could rattle this offense. And the Broncos, right? We know that Sanders is the receiver one. He's getting, or last week 9, he got 24% of that target share to Sutton's 13%. We might see that shift after the bye, where Sutton gets a little bit more targets, obviously in that number 2 spot where he gets a little bit more comfortable. And you don't really know exactly how they're going to utilize Sanders as a number 1. He's never really been a number 1 in any offense for that matter. So at that price tag, like Steve mentioned, paying up for these studs that they're going to get a target share, or paying down like John Brown in a plus matchup, I'd rather go elsewhere for the price.
Jeff, are you confident enough at Sanders for $6,200?
I mean, Steve and these guys they brought up the matchup. It's not really that great. And I just don't like targeting the Denver pass game, period. I mean, it's random. They like to run the ball even when they're down. So Sanders is an interesting GPP target. I'll give you that. I mean, he's probably going to be really low owned, but when you look value-wise, you can just dip down to like Amari Cooper, Corey Davis, Galladay is way cheaper. And I think the upside is pretty similar. I think you just do that. I mean, I don't know. I just don't really have a desire to target this Denver pass game. Case Keenum's really not that good, and they don't like the pass. So I'm okay with just not touching Sanders this week.
And Pittsburgh's Vance McDonald had his second highest fantasy points total in Week 10 with 14.4 on Thursday Night Football. The Steelers take on the Jaguars this week, and McDonald is priced at $4K. Do you like that one, Reed?
I do. I mean, look what Indianapolis did. They got 3 total touchdowns, Ebron getting 2. I forget that guy's name. That guy has 2 last names. That's not Jack Doyle, right? Indianapolis gets quite a bit. And if you look at Jacksonville, they're giving up 13.5 DK fantasy points to opposing tight ends. That's pretty good when you look at this position. Vance McDonald is the number 1 tight end in his own team. We're not seeing Jesse James that much. Yes, he got a touchdown, but Vance McDonald has had solid games over the last few weeks with Pittsburgh. So now you go against the Jacksonville defense that really hasn't been able to stop anyone against the pass. So I do like Vance McDonald at this price. There's like Zach Ertz is a guy that if you really want to pay up for someone, right, he's sort of a safe option. But yeah, Vance McDonald at this price tag is really appealing.
Yeah, he went from $3,700 to $3,600. Now he's $4K. Steve, do you like him at that number?
The problem with McDonald's, he just gets absolutely no looks in the red zone at all. He accounts for just 5.8% of their red zone targets on the year. So because of that, he's just such a boom or bust option. I mean, we saw him in a game that really he should have done very well in against the Bengals. The Bengals have been very bad against opposing tight ends. He didn't reach the end zone. He had 68 receiving yards for 13.8 DK fantasy points. And while that's not bad by any means, that's not going to bring home the bread. So it's one of those things that, if you want to save some salary, sure, McDonald is absolutely an option, but he's not one of those guys that's going to go absolutely ham for you on any given week because he's so boom or bust and he just doesn't get the looks in the red zone. So it's not a bad price, but it's not a great price either.
Because we want to get this bread.
Let's get
Jeff,
this bread.
If we're trying to get this bread.
Get this bread.
Do you like Vance McDonald?
Oh, yeah, I love butter.
How about you, Jeff? You like butter?
Sure.
Mr. Energy here.
He's more than capable of taking like a pass to 60 yards, in the right circumstance. He's got that after catch ability. So, and if you follow my theory of Pittsburgh is absolutely going to hammer Jacksonville this week, then I think he actually does have some upside, like Reed mentioned. So I don't absolutely hate him. I do kind of like Evan Ingram a bit too for the same reasons. It's an easier matchup, I think. So I don't know. Not really a must play by any means. I think Austin Hooper is much safer, probably a better cash game target for just 500 more. But yeah, tournament targets, Ingram, McVance, I think they both have upside this week. It's just their floors are way lower. So.
I'd just like to quickly say we have 30 seconds left, and Reed thinks the Jaguars are going to win this weekend.
I don't think that's true.
Do we believe Emerson at all? Anything that he says
that we had in a real
down of the year coming, Emerson.
Yeah,
sorry, man. Again, sorry. It's really not.
I listen to Reed more. Reed thinks they're going to win. It's
Okay.
I like butter.
Guys, Steve likes butter. That's our
I love
show. I'm Jessie. He's Emerson. You guys rock. The Sweat will be back tomorrow at 6 o'clock. We appreciate the time as always.
Let's
Catch
get
us
that
on
bread.
DK Live
Let's
app,
get that
Twitter,
bread.
Facebook, YouTube. We're going to go get some bread, I
Let's
guess.
get some bread.
See you later.